Every sailor knows there is one rule in the open ocean that overrides almost everything else. You do not stop. Not for a broken engine, not for a medical emergency on board, not even for a man overboard if stopping puts the entire vessel at risk. This sounds brutal. It sounds like the kind of rule that exists only in old maritime stories from another century. But it is not a tradition or a superstition passed down through generations of sailors. It is physics. A ship that stops moving in the open ocean enters a state of vulnerability that most people living on land cannot imagine and cannot easily escape from without the right sequence of actions. The forces that act on a stationary vessel in deep water are completely different from the forces acting on a moving one. And the difference between those two states can be the difference between arriving safely at port and disappearing from radar without leaving.
To understand the problem fully, we first need to understand what actually keeps a large ship stable while it is moving forward through the water. A vessel at sea is not simply floating on flat, calm water like a toy boat in a bathtub. The ocean surface is in constant motion in every direction. Waves, swells, wind chop, and the wakes of other vessels all create a complex and constantly changing surface that the ship must navigate continuously. When a ship is moving forward at operational speed, its hull is interacting with the water in a way that generates both lift and stability simultaneously. The bow pushes water aside cleanly, creating a pressure distribution along the entire hull that keeps the vessel tracking straight and responding predictably to every input from the rudder. The propeller wash creates a continuous and powerful flow of water across the rudder surface, giving the helmsman directional control at all times, regardless of sea conditions. The entire system, hull shape, propeller, rudder, and stabilizer fins, works as a single integrated unit that depends entirely on forward motion to function correctly. Remove the forward motion, and the system begins to fail in ways that are not immediately obvious from the outside, but become catastrophic very quickly once they develop.
The first problem a stopped ship encounters is called beam sea rolling. When a vessel loses forward motion through the water, it simultaneously loses its ability to angle itself relative to incoming waves. A moving ship can be steered to take waves at a specific angle, typically somewhere between 30 and 45 degrees off the bow, which is the most stable orientation for most hull designs in most sea conditions. A stopped ship has no such control over its orientation. It drifts broadside to the dominant wave direction, meaning the waves begin hitting it directly from the side rather than from ahead. This condition is called lying in the beam sea. The rolling motion that results from sustained beam sea conditions is not simply uncomfortable for the crew or damaging to loose equipment. It is mechanically dangerous for the entire structure of the vessel. A large cargo ship rolling 20 to 30 degrees to each side is experiencing structural forces throughout its hull and cargo holds that it was never designed to sustain continuously over a long period. Cargo breaks loose from its securing lashings and begins shifting with each roll. Fuel moves in tanks, changing the vessel's center of gravity unpredictably with each cycle. In extreme conditions that are not even particularly unusual in the open ocean, a ship lying in the beam sea can roll past its angle of maximum stability and capsize completely and rapidly. This has happened to real vessels with experienced crews in conditions that were not considered extreme by open ocean standards at the time.
The second problem that develops when a ship stops is what naval engineers call parametric rolling. This is a phenomenon that was not fully understood by the maritime engineering community until relatively recently, and it has caused several major incidents involving large modern container ships that were considered state-of-the-art at the time. Parametric rolling occurs when the period of the waves, meaning the precise time interval between one wave crest and the next arriving at the ship, matches or closely approaches the natural rolling period of the ship itself. When this synchronization occurs, the rolling motion amplifies with each successive wave cycle, in exactly the same way that resonance amplifies oscillations in a tall building or causes a bridge to shake itself apart. The ship begins rolling further and further to each side with each passing wave, even in moderate sea conditions that would normally pose absolutely no danger to the vessel or its cargo. Several container ships have lost hundreds of containers overboard due to parametric rolling events. The containers simply torn from their securing systems by the extreme lateral accelerations involved in the amplifying rolls. A stopped ship with no ability to maneuver and no speed through the water cannot escape this condition once it begins to develop, because escaping parametric rolling requires changing speed or changing heading relative to the waves, and a stopped ship can do neither.
The third major problem involves the propulsion system itself and how it behaves when a ship attempts to restart after a complete stop. Large ships use propellers that are engineered to operate at specific rotational speeds and under specific and carefully calculated load conditions. When a ship stops its engines completely, the propeller does not simply coast to a halt the way a car engine does when you turn off the ignition. The massive propeller blades, some of them 5 to 10 meters in diameter on the largest cargo vessels currently operating, continue rotating in the water, driven by the enormous inertia of a vessel that may weigh 200,000 tons or more and is still moving forward through the water. This uncontrolled rotation, called freewheeling, can cause serious mechanical damage to the propulsion shafting and bearings if not carefully managed by the engineering crew below. More critically, restarting a large marine diesel engine after a complete stop is nothing like starting a car. A large two-stroke diesel engine of the kind used in modern cargo ships can require several minutes to restart, warm up, and reach a speed at which it can drive the propeller effectively against the resistance of the water. During those minutes, the ship is completely without propulsion and without rudder control, drifting freely in whatever direction the wind and current happen to be pushing it. If the complete stop occurred near a coastline, near shallow water, near another vessel, or in a heavily trafficked shipping lane, those uncontrolled minutes can have consequences from which the vessel cannot recover.
There are situations where reducing speed dramatically is unavoidable, regardless of the risks. A man overboard emergency requires slowing immediately and turning back toward the person in the water. A medical evacuation by rescue helicopter requires the ship to slow to a very low speed and hold a precise, steady course directly into the wind to give the helicopter a safe approach. In each of these cases, professional maritime crews do not simply stop the engines and wait for conditions to improve. They execute a precise and well-rehearsed sequence of actions designed to minimize the vessel's vulnerability during the period of reduced speed. They turn the bow into the dominant wave direction to reduce rolling. They maintain just enough engine power to keep steerage way, meaning the minimum speed at which the rudder still has effect. They deploy stabilizer fins to their maximum operating angle. They broadcast their situation and position to nearby vessels by radio. Every action in the sequence is aimed at reducing the window of dangerous vulnerability as quickly as possible and restoring full, controlled forward motion. And this is what makes the open ocean fundamentally different from any other environment in which large vehicles operate. A truck that breaks down on the highway stops safely at the side of the road and waits. An aircraft that loses power can glide and has time to find options. A ship that stops moving in the open ocean immediately begins a process of physical deterioration, driven by forces that do not pause and do not negotiate. The ocean does not allow neutrality. You are either moving and maintaining control over your situation, or you are stopped and the situation is controlling you. Every maritime engineer, every naval architect, and every captain who has spent real time at sea in real conditions understands this. The rule that you do not stop is not arbitrary. It is written into the physics of every vessel that has ever crossed deep water under its own power. If this kind of analysis interests you, subscribe. What comes next will be even more interesting.